Welcome to Bruce Hurwitz Presents Meet the Experts. I'm your host, Bruce Hurwitz of Hurwitz Strategic Staffing. You can find me on the web at hsstaffing.com. I hope you'll consider me for all of your staffing, career counseling, and professional writing needs. Momentarily, I will be joined by Mark Aylward. We will be discussing finding work in the current economy. Meet the Experts is sponsored by P&K CPAs. P&K is a full-service accounting firm. They provide accounting and consulting services to businesses ranging from startups to small and mid-cap companies to nonprofits as well as high-net-worth individuals. Contact them today for a free consultation at info@pk-cpas.com or call them at 973-882-8810. They will be happy to be of service. Mark, welcome to the program.
Thank you, Bruce. I appreciate you having me.
It's my pleasure. Please take a moment or two and introduce yourself to our viewers.
So again, my name is Mark Aylward. I've spent about 30 years in the staffing space. I built and sold a couple of staffing companies focused on IT primarily. Single father of 3 young adult children, and that's actually my favorite role. Doesn't pay as well as the other one does, but originally from Boston and been living in Orlando, Florida now for about 30 years.
Now, as I understand it, when adult children grow up, they reimburse their parents for the expenses.
Yeah. You and I live in two different universes.
Well, we may live in 2 different universes, but we work in the same orbit.
Yes.
And I like having colleagues on. I don't understand. There are some who will not have a colleague who they consider to be a competitor on their show, and I don't understand that.
Yeah.
So
yeah, I don't get that either.
Let's get to it. Our topic is finding work in the current economy. Now, finding work has always been, depending on your level, walking down the street and seeing the help wanted sign in the window and going in and introducing yourself, or answering job ads, or networking.
Mm-hmm.
So what's different in the current economy?
Well, I go back to 1987 when there were stockbrokers jumping out of windows and there were no jobs, and I was in Boston, and so we developed the skill, kind of reverse engineered the skill, and we went out and found the best software developer in a particular language in a particular industry, and then we took them around and asked companies if they wanted to upscale their talent pool. This is the best guy in Massachusetts. And it was an interesting way to learn the job, but it was like all of it was unautomated. We had one fax machine, for 40 recruiters, 3 different groups. Fast forward to today, the biggest thing most recently is AI, but I don't think anybody really understands how that's going to impact staffing yet. There are some that profess to know, but I think it's too early to know. It will impact it.
I agree.
Yeah, and then the social media, obviously, and the dependence on social media and online connection, which is a completely different kind of connection. And I think that, when I coach people that are looking for work, that are looking to make some sort of professional change, which is typically an upgrade, obviously, and that can come in different forms, as you well know. I find that I have to pull them back and say, look, let's talk about what you do. Let's talk about why you do it, and let's talk about how to tell that story. Or let's figure out, maybe you don't want to do that anymore. You want to do something else, and how do we do that? And so most people, in my estimation, approach it as a kind of blind transaction, throw it out there and see what comes back. I try and get to the decision makers as quickly as possible, but I don't put people in front of decision makers until they have that story down. And I tell you, Bruce, half the people I talk to haven't given themselves permission to do something different. They want to, but they don't believe it's possible. So that's a bit philosophical, but I think that's one of the biggest things. And then another thing I tell people is that I hope you understand by now there's no such thing as job security. So let's just take that off the table. And frankly, I think it's 70%. I can't support that with data. That's just something I recall reading. Of the open positions out there are with companies with less than 250 employees, and those people are reachable. You know, you can reach leaders at those companies, and we don't pay any attention to them. And as we said before, I use LinkedIn to create content, to build credibility. My most recent client found me on LinkedIn. I didn't find him, he found me. And so those are a few initial thoughts. I'm sure we could go deep into any of those areas, but that's kind of a broad brush.
Well, let's continue with the last thing you said, because that's also LinkedIn is my primary avenue for getting clients. I tell my career counseling clients that it's better to be chased by employers than to have to chase them. And the only way they can chase you is if they know you exist. And the only way they know you exist is if you are on social media. And therefore they should write, or they should, if they can't write, or they're not permitted to write because of the nature of their work, they can still share articles or professional material and become a source for their professional network.
Yep. Yeah, I mean, adding value can come in many forms. I am fortunate in that I don't have any restrictions on what I can say or to whom I can say it, which is somewhat a double-edged sword with me sometimes. You know, but I made peace with the fact that when you take a position, and it's a valid position, but there's an opposing position to it, that you might lose half your audience out there, but that still leaves hundreds of millions of people. So it's, you know, I stopped worrying about that a long time ago. And I think, Bruce, one of the things that's improved on my success, and there are a few kind of inner work stuff I'm doing, but is the authenticity with which I write and shoot videos. I dropped the proper front door a long time ago, and I use spicy language sometimes. I'm very sarcastic when I want to be. So, you know, I'm appealing to a particular audience with that. And the more authentic I get, the more people come to me that I want coming to me, not just coming to me, but those are people that I want, that want to hear more, if that makes sense.
Yeah, sure it does. And one of the hesitancies that I've come across, and believe me, I understand it, is that if you go out and put yourself out there in the public domain, you're going to be criticized. You're going to be attacked. And a lot of people can't handle that. I can. I have a feeling that you can. It comes with experience. It comes with age, maturity, and also being able to, my background is in international relations, and my professors always said to me, consider the source.
Yeah.
Cool. And if it's some idiot, then I don't care what they say, and you don't have to respond to everyone. But it's difficult for someone who is desperate to find a job. They don't want to offend anyone. They're smart enough not to be political, but not everyone is going to agree with you if you write something about AI. My opinion of AI is it's going to be big, like you said, but it's too new. They now have what are called hallucinations, that the program, the AI, makes things up. So you have to check everything that's written, and it probably takes less time just to write it than to have to check what the AI produces. So I'm not concerned about AI. In a couple of years, I'll be concerned, but not today. And it'll be different in a couple of years. It'll probably be different in a couple of months.
Yeah.
But how do you get people to overcome their hesitancy to get into the public domain?
Yeah, it's a great question. I think back to something I said earlier, because my 3 adult kids, it's not been long ago that I helped them get work, and then I helped them start their own companies. And they said to me over and over, Dad, you got to get out there and get in front of more people, because nobody else is teaching what you know. And I mean, I got them jobs, they got more money than they thought they were going to get, and they didn't want to, they struggled with the public domain. They struggled with being salesy. They struggled with those fears and anxieties. I think it's information. I think it's taking someone from a position of uncertainty and bringing them to a place of more certainty. And I think that's with answers. When I share with somebody how to handle objections, and then we start talking back and forth, the more they understand, they'll say things like, "Can you say that again? I want to write that down." And the more you give them information, the more questions that you answer, and the more uncertainty you replace with certainty, I think that begins to breed confidence. And then I try and be as supportive as possible. I mean, you got this. And one of the phrases that popped into my head when you were saying that was, if I can get this right, I can't attribute it, so I apologize for that, but it's, don't ever take criticism from someone from whom you would not take advice. And I thought that was
Good.
another cool way of saying that.
Mhm.
Yeah, no, I lead by example. It's not that I don't care what someone thinks about me, but I don't care about it to personalize it. And the politics thing, I'm not political online, but I don't accept, I try and focus on being as authentic as possible. And if someone says something that I disagree with and it's something that interests me, of course, if it doesn't interest me, I leave it alone and move on. But if it interests me, I try and respond empathetically, kindly, practically. And I look for, why is that? Why do you feel that way? So, but I think some of it's practice and some of it's information. And if you get the right information and you practice that, I've seen evidence of people just becoming more confident, before my eyes. And then they'll use one of my lines in an interview or something and it'll work. And they'll
Mhm.
be like, wow, that's cool.
Yeah. I like when they call and say, Bruce, I got to give you credit. I got the job. I made the one change you told me to make, and I thank them because I learned a long time ago, take the compliment.
Yes.
Don't make a big, just say thank you, take the compliment. But there are 1,001 factors in an interview.
Yeah.
And just because they made the one change that you suggested doesn't mean that's the reason that they got the job. And you'll never know why they got the
You'll
job.
never know. Yeah. You'll never
They'll
know.
never know.
Yeah. Yeah. It's a team effort.
But it's difficult when you're not in the room to have to be able to critique what happened during the interview because you're only getting it from your client's side.
Mhm.
So you have his or her prejudices and biases, and you've got to somehow get the right answer.
Yeah.
So I will say to them, well, what did you say when you were asked? Let's take a silly one. What are your weaknesses?
Yeah.
All right. Or tell me about your biggest failure. I actually had someone say to me, I prepare very well. I have never had a failure. And to myself, I said, lady, you just had a failure because you're not getting this job.
Yeah. Isn't it funny how feedback from the client or the candidate is very often not how that particular individual was perceived or felt.
And
And
they're not lying.
no, there's
Totally.
nothing worse than having to let somebody down that the first thing they say to you after the interview is that I killed that interview. I definitely got the job. And then they don't. And yeah,
The
that's
analogy I use is exams. You
mhm,
walk out of the exam, it was terrible. It was awful. I'm not going to graduate. Turns out you did very well on it.
yeah,
And then
yeah,
you leave and you go, I aced it.
yeah,
I'm on my way. I failed? How could I have failed?
yeah.
I don't know.
Yeah, well, we tell ourselves stories. We kid ourselves a lot, and Yeah, yeah, I think I feel for the people that are out there looking. There's a lot of desperation out there, and as you well know, desperation is the ultimate interview killer. And so I spend a lot of time with people on that. I spend a lot of time with people on personal accountability
Mhm.
because I don't care who you are. If you blame someone else or something else,
Mhm.
you're not going to get the job. People don't want victims. They want people that are personally accountable.
I
So
have one person who had 10 jobs in 5 years, and it was always somebody else's fault.
yeah,
And she
yeah.
called me up and I said, well, send me your resume and then we'll do a complimentary consultation.
Mhm.
Not a problem. I look at this resume, I go, this woman's never getting another job. She can't hold the job. And
Yeah,
sure enough, she's blaming all of her previous employers.
yeah.
And I said, if you want to get a good, high-paying job, you have to stay where you are for at least 3 years to repair the damage that you did over the last 5.
Yeah, that's an interesting case study there. I think that I'm sure you're 100% correct because you had the opportunity to speak to her and people are who they are. But I just wrote something the other day that said, it's amazing to me that in 30 some odd years, I think I've had one person when I asked them how much they made, he said, hang on a second, I got my W-2 in my drawer, $132,476.27. One time in 30 years. It's always a circumstance or a condition. And it's like, I don't think that's an integrity issue. I think that's an insecurity issue and people not understanding how valuable transparency is. But I would say the other thing that is everybody falls down on is exactly what you just said, which is why are you looking? Why did you leave your last job? Why did you leave the job before that? I think in today's day, in terms of finding work in today's economy, your topic, I think that's less of a concern, provided you can tell a story that makes sense.
Mhm,
And because layoffs happen, things happen that are beyond people's control.
mhm.
Some people have to move. Some people just started a family. Things happen in life, but 10, 15 jobs in 5 years is a difficult story to tell. But um, I just look for transparency. And you said one of my favorite questions. It's not about my biggest failure, but when I'm interviewing a recruiter or a sales rep to come work for me,
Mhm.
the only question I think is necessary, and this is probably true for most positions. Tell me the hardest thing that's ever happened to you in your life and how you came out the other side. And then I just sit back and listen because you get creativity, storytelling, transparency, authenticity. Um, you find out everything it is. And I used to tell this story about if you didn't graduate from college, and I ask you why you didn't graduate from college, and you tell me I just lost interest, I'm going to tell you to have a nice day. But if you tell me I left college early and I ask you why, and you tell me my father passed away and I had to go help my mother run the company, I said, can you start Monday?
Yeah.
You know? So you gotta, this, they all have, nuance to them, you know?
Well, I have a woman who I worked with many, many years ago. She is phenomenal in her field. I would go so far as to say she's the best. And she works in Manhattan. She lives in Manhattan, and she wants to move to North Carolina. And she said to me, what do I say when they ask me why I decided to leave my job? And I said, you don't have a problem. It's very simple. All you have to do is tell the truth.
Yeah.
It's dangerous in Manhattan. You've been physically and verbally attacked on the subway. You don't feel safe. You don't have quality of life. You want to get out of Manhattan.
Mm-hmm.
And you have family in North Carolina. End of story.
Yep. Yep.
It's not, it's, I don't know how much this would have impacted you, but here, meaning the greater New York area, 9/11 was given as the reason why somebody left their job or lost their job.
Mm-hmm.
You didn't delve into it.
Mm-hmm.
You could tell by the expression on their face if they were telling the truth or they were lying.
Right. Right.
And that was it.
Yeah, it's I've had a lot of conversations, I'm sure you have too, with people about this notion of telling the truth as a default. And I think that the truth is scary for people because of many, many reasons that we don't need to go into now. But that whole transparency thing, it's not, to me, it's not, the truth's not going to get you in trouble, but there are ways to tell the truth. There is the time to tell the truth.
Mhm.
There is to whom to tell the truth.
Mhm.
And then, you know, the way that you tell the truth, the way that you say it. And so, yeah, it's my default is the truth. And I joke with people all the time. It's because I don't want to have to remember what I said. You know,
Exactly.
I don't have enough mental capacity for that.
That's, I said that once to a prospective client who became a client. I
Yeah.
said, I'm not going to lie to you, not for religious reasons, but simply because I've got enough trouble remembering the truth. To remember lies, it's just not going to happen.
Yeah.
And that's what closed it. But to one funny anecdote, I used to ask 3 questions, not right after each other. There were questions in between. The first question was, what are you most proud of? And this guy said to me, my wife and children. I said, no, professionally.
Mm.
What was your biggest success? My wife and children. No, professionally. Why are you leaving your current position? I had an affair with a colleague. It didn't work out. And when it went south, there was just too much tension. And he said it to me the same way I would say I'm wearing a white shirt
Yeah.
and a jacket. I mean,
Yeah.
just like there's no contradiction here.
Yeah.
So, that was that.
You know, I remember the first placement I ever made. He was an electrical engineer, and he had 3 young boys, and he was single, and he was about to lose his home. And I got him a job. And I thought to myself, man, he told me, you saved my life, you know. And I was 25, you know, and that's a heavy burden. But I also thought I'm where I belong. I'm the mediator. I'm the agent. I'm the negotiator. I'm the attorney. I'm the person brokering the deal. I'm the in-between guy. And uh, uh, um, boy, it's if you're taught well and you do it well and you do it relationship wise, long term wise, it's a great profession, you know. And the other thing, Bruce, and I'm sure you've seen this, because there's no barriers to entry, there's a lot of schmucks. So distinguishing yourself is not that hard.
I distinguish
You
myself
know?
by calling every candidate to tell them what their final status is.
Yeah.
I've been
Yeah.
doing this for 20 years, so you do the math, how many people I have called and told them, sorry, you're not getting the job.
Yeah.
Out of all the, for sake of arguments, hundreds, because I don't think it would be thousands, but hundreds of people, only one was nasty.
Yeah. Yeah. And you know, that's a great and I told my kids when they were going off to work, you know, if you do what you say you're going to do,
Mhm.
every time you say you're going to do it, you'll be in the top 5% of your profession.
Yep.
And that's kind of a sad thing on one hand, but on the other hand, just be you know, and you'll be fine.
Let's go back to one thing was mentioned previously about change. There are people who come to me and say they want to change their job. There are people who say they want to change their employer. And there are people who say they want to change their profession.
Mhm.
And on many occasions, I can talk them out of it because they like their employer, they like their colleagues, they like their clients or customers. So I help them to come up with a proposal to their boss for them to get new responsibilities so they'll stay on the job and there's never a problem because the employer doesn't want to lose them.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
How do you deal with the 3? The change of job, the change of responsibility, a change of employer, or the change of profession?
Yeah, my initial response to that is just questions. Those are three statements that could very easily be misinterpreted, right? So I would probably say, okay, let's get under the covers there. Tell me what that means. First of all, what is your profession, right? Why are you doing what you do? And is it purposeful for you? How do you feel on Sunday night, about Monday morning? So it's really just about going into details. And I like what you said about convincing them to stay. That's a really kind thing to do, for most people. And then, I would ask, what's the relationship with your boss? Oh, I love my boss. Well, then you should be able to talk to him about just about everything. Yeah. Yeah, that's probably a good point. So it's just, most of these situations, Bruce, I find just require more detail and more context before I offer advice. Otherwise, I could potentially be pointing someone in the wrong direction. So context is big with me, but yeah, it's really just drilling down, asking why, what does that mean? Why, what does that mean? And listening empathetically.
Mark, I have one final question for you, and I'm going to put on your contact information.
Mm-hmm.
Is there anything that I did not ask, which you wish I had asked? And if I had asked, what would you have said?
I suppose, what are you doing now? And because I started off historically, I'm leveraging all of that experience running companies, selling companies, building them, and helping people find work. I'm in the leadership coaching space now and professional coaching space now. And I'm finding myself kind of gravitating towards middle-aged men that that they have a practical worldview. And so I'm looking to find companies that are interested in bringing someone in to train their teams for leadership, whether that's a succession plan or just promotion plan. That's a lot of fun. And the first guy that asked me if I did it, I said, I've been doing it for 30 years. I just never called it that. So yeah, I'm trying to move away from trading my time for money and scaling a couple of training programs, one in the leadership space and the other one in the kind of career change space. So similar work, different delivery model.
Mark, I want to thank you profusely. I found this both enjoyable and informative, and I'm sure our viewers have as well. So
That's
I thank
awesome. Thank you for having me, Bruce. I enjoyed it very much as well. It was a lot of fun.
my pleasure.
Take care.
I'm Bruce Hurwitz. Thank you for watching. And as always, please stay focused on success.